The cost of living crisis continues to be an external problem of this country. Just continues to rise, continues to be just the burden of everybody. It just seems like all the issues that affect majority of the country are completely getting ignored to focus on itty bitty little, trivial nonsense, the kind of segregation that they want to enforce to distract you from the fact that our country is imploding within, the fact that our leadership is liquidating the essence of this country for their own vicious affairs, whether it be foreign wars or their own personal bank accounts, whatever the case may be. And it's affecting everybody. It's affecting no matter who you are in this country. It is devastating, especially when it comes to the cost of groceries. Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs to get food. Everyone needs to nourish themselves. That is a vital essential for most people. And we got this warning before 2026. This is the Happy New Year present that we got as being Canadians. It says Canadian families could pay up to $1,000 more for groceries, a report warned. So we already talked about that extensively in a segment that revealed this information, how the cost of living, how, the metrics of endless taxation, how the supply management chain, how they're putting a grab hold on this, how everything is being a domino effect that's going to cost you more to nourish yourself. And it's become such a vital issue for everybody that has now overtaken all this talk about trade. And the mainstream media here in Canada, they're primarily focused on trade because anything to bash Donald Trump with, anything to bash America over with, that, oh, well, they're not, willing to sit down. They're not willing to negotiate. Well, we've seen how many times that the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, goes over to Washington. We see this riling up of, oh, this is finally going to be the moment. And what do? Donald Trump and Mark Carney just giggle and walk away. So we know that a lot of this trade war, it's all manufactured. It's all manufactured to basically burden us with the complete collapse of our nations so that the barons can walk away with with everything and leave us high and dry. So now here is this guy Shazi says cost of living is now overtaking U.S. trade as Canadians' top concern. The focus isn't tariffs on geopolitics anymore. It's groceries, rent, and jobs. Yes, domestic policies that we should be highlighting on a daily basis. This should be nonstop conversations. I don't care what's happening in Iran. I don't care what's happening in Ukraine. I don't care what's happening anywhere else in the world. I mean, I would care after mentioning the point that Canadians are suffering right here at home and the fact that our representative government has completely just ignored the population for malice reasons. But the important issue is this, because this affects everybody. As food bank use rises and tent cities spread, priorities have shifted inward toward basic survival. The economy isn't an abstract debate anymore. For many Canadians, it's daily life. So here's CTV News Channel. They even brought this to attention because all these polls are coming out. Abacus is doing polls. Nanos is doing polls now that confirmed that cost of living is way more important than any of this geopolitics, anything about, China or anything outside the country at this point. Because you don't have a society that can feed and clothe and house themselves. You don't have a society anymore. You don't have a country anymore. So take a listen to this.
Nick Nanos is out with some new information today for CTV, gauging the opinions of Canadians on priorities for the federal government in this new year. What does it reveal?
Yeah, look, Marcia, look, this data from Nanos Research really putting a clear lens on what Canadians are most prioritizing, or what they want to see most the government prioritizing in this parliamentary session. And the numbers are interesting and tell a few different pictures. Unsurprisingly, I think, the rising cost of living is the #1 priority among respondents to the survey. And, Canadians who believe that should be the #1 priority, that has increased from September to December. 26% of respondents, just over that, say that is the #1 priority, or they believe that should be the #1 priority. That's up 21% from September. #2 on that list, jobs in the economy. 18.4% of respondents believe that should be the government's #1 priority. That's up from 16% in September. And falling a little bit in terms of what Canadians believe should be a #1 issue, or a priority issue, is trade negotiations with the U.S. 17% of respondents believed that should be a priority for the government. That's down from 21% from the last time this question was asked in September. Now, important to note that despite the fact that percentage-wise, trade negotiations with the U.S. is down a little bit, we're still seeing that be one of the top priorities for Canadians for about a year now. Just goes to show, while Canadians are concerned, of course, about ongoing negotiation with the U.S., more of a priority right now are, of course, jobs in the economy, and chief among all of those concerns is the rising cost of living. So, it is an interesting...
I just want to stop it there because they break it down across all these provinces here. So, Ontario, 24.4%. This is the rising cost of living, a top priority issue for the House of Commons in 2016 by region. So 24.4% Ontario, 22.7% Quebec, Atlantic Canada, 38.1%, the Prairie Provinces, 33.8%, and BC, 23.3%. And again, I this should be the top priority issue because this affects everybody. This affects everybody. But here we are on a daily basis. You go on to, these regular outlets, and what they talk about? They talk about sowing division. They want to segregate people. They want people to be angry about, transgenderism and woke culture and this and that. And, oh my God, did you hear what Trump tweeted the other day? And, oh my God, this, that, the other. They don't focus on the general fact that survival in this country, in Canada, that is one of the richest nations on the face of the earth, and has the potential to be the richest nation on the face of the earth, is collapsing within. Because our governments, our parliamentary structure, our system of governance is an utter disgrace to this nation. An utter disgrace to this nation, which is why this is happening. And of course, the mainstream media is not going to highlight that because CTV, CBC, Global, all these outlets are getting subsidies by the government to keep them afloat. They're not doing it because they have good journalistic integrity. Very few times I've seen that within these outlets, but majority of the time, it's not that case. They cover for the parliamentary system. They cover for the liberal establishment. That's what Justin Trudeau even said openly. We gave them a bunch of money and they don't talk to us. They don't hold us accountable. Even though this should be held to the most extreme accountability. Because you can't afford food. You can't afford to feed yourself or your family, or if you have children. I couldn't even imagine you're a family of 4 and you had to survive on 1 or 2 incomes. Trying to how is this possible? How is it possible? So, this should be a vital issue. It should be of importance. Here's the food professor. He's really good at breaking down statistics when it comes to the Canadian surge of grocery prices here. He says, think food inflation in Canada is high. You haven't seen anything yet. New food inflation data were released Tuesday, February 17th. Early signals suggest January's rate could come around 6.2%, a significant acceleration Meanwhile, in the United States, despite tariff pressures and ongoing trade tensions, food inflation eased to 2.9%, down from 3.1% in January. That gap matters. Canada's food inflation problem isn't cynical, it's structural. And until we address the policy choices and market rigidities driving up costs through the system, price pressures will persist. Brace yourself. So, there's going to be new data coming by the time you're watching this that is going to show the rising of food costs accelerating. Even though we have this new government, even though Mark Carney is supposed to come in and fix things for the better, he is announcing this grocery rebate that certain people of the country are going to get a certain percentage of money back that may feed them for once in the year. That may be enough to buy some canned goods to wild it out like a bunch of survivalists. But it doesn't hide the fact that this is continuing to increase. 6.2%. And it's astronomical. It's astronomical considering the fact that Canada has vast resources, that we have agriculture, but because we have a parliamentary system that diminishes all that, intentionally liquidates our assets, continuously demines the presence of our vastly resources that could make us beneficial, that could actually strive us down the lane into a better society. They're siphoning us intentionally to cause this. And this backfires into so many areas. Here's Food Professor again. Breaking food inflation hits a staggering 7.3% in January, including 4.8% for food purchase from stores. Even accounting for last year's GST holiday-based effect, food inflation would be around 6.3%, the highest among G7 countries. Again, how it's not mainstream priority, how it's not more on national television, how there's not an uproar to this is beyond me. Is beyond me. I know that they keep people complicit. I know there's a mass brainwash, there's a mass psychosis to keep people in line, to keep people distracted from stuff like this. But how long can they go on with this? How long can they play these games? How long can they lie to us, say that they're going to get elected to, deal with the grocery costs? Because that was what Mark Carney said. You got to judge my work by the cost of groceries. Well, it's accelerating. So clearly Mark Carney is a failure. Is an absolute failure. But here he is making this announcement. New measures to make groceries and other essentials more affordable to Canadians. But that's just a headline. Here's what they're actually telling you. The government is introducing the Canadian Groceries and Essentials Benefit. So, not removing the taxes, not removing the stranglehold of these supply chain management. They're not allowing agricultural sector to rise and not putting restrictions on them. No, they're saying that you're going to get a certain amount of money at some point this year to help you pay for groceries. Because they think what? You're only going to eat once? You're only going to eat once a year? Is that what they're suggesting here? Formerly the Goods and Services Tax, GST credit, we are increasing the amount by 25% for 5 years beginning in July 2026. So this is their great measure. Oh, you're going to get, for the people that can get a GST credit, which is only a certain amount of Canadians, you're going to get 25% more because we're deliberately rising up the prices of groceries. Make that make sense. Instead of, hey, let's just remove the carbon taxes, Remove the industrial taxes. Stop taxation on groceries. And there's people out there that say, well, there's no taxes on fresh fruits and vegetables. If you consider the manufacturing tax, if you factor in the agricultural tax, the taxes that go into producing and allowing for farmers to grow and all the red tape and bureaucracy that goes in it, yeah, that's what's costing so much. And it makes absolutely no sense. Makes absolutely no sense considering that just years ago, people managed just fine with groceries. So make it make sense. Here's this. This is from a thing called Wealth Moose. Mark Carney's food inflation and household debt. And they break down all these countries here. Look at Canada. The household debt share as share of GDP, 103%. That's just insane. That's just insane. Here's food inflation. They break down certain items that have gone up in recent months. Strawberries, 94.7%. Cantaloupe, 36.4%. Romaine lettuce, 29.2%. Deep top sirloin, 23.5%. And meanwhile, Canadian farmers that are able to grow this crop that could bring to Canadians, that can make it easier on their wallets when they're buying groceries, they're being sidelined. They're being sidelined. Make it make sense. Again, make it make sense that this is occurring. This is a good thing. And why nobody is going to the streets, why nobody is in uproar over stuff like this, because this affects everybody. So, here's Canada's Economic Development Minister, this guy, Garnet Genius. What a fantastic name. I don't think that's actually how it's said, but it looks like genius. Says soaring food prices are tied to climate change. So this is their magic scapegoat to not be held accountable because, hey, climate change, it's nature. Nature wants you to starve. Nature wants you to forget about paying for actual food. Nature wants you to starve on the street. Instead of, hey, we should be holding ourselves accountable for all these taxations and red tape and bureaucracy and restrictions and regulations and the fact that we're cutting off our ability of agriculture, which is one of the oldest professions on the face of the earth. That doesn't get addressed, but climate change is the issue here. So take a listen to how stupid this is coming from.
Minister, why do you think food cost inflation is twice the level that it is in the United States?
Well, I think we've covered this question in the House quite a bit, and we've got a number of conflating situations in Canada, including, as you would note, the tariffs that we've experiencing as a country. But you know, you can yourself. I think you're from the western part of this country. You yourself can speak to
Minister,
some of the cattle farmers who are
how do you?
So she's just mealy-mouthing a word salad there. That's Patty Hajdu. So that's the minister there. That the genius guy is actually the correct one for speaking to her. But Patty Hajdu, she's just making a mealy-mouthed excuses. Well, because of inflation and because of climate change and a myriad of so many other things, like we can't actually do anything about it or actually find a way to, it's just difficult times and people just got to brace themselves for it. So you're not even going to mention the fact that you didn't get rid of carbon taxes like Mark Carney pledged and riled people up. Oh yeah, Mark Carney got rid of carbon taxes. Hooray for everybody. Oh, by the way, there's still industrial carbon taxes that you're paying for. There's still agricultural taxes that you're paying for. You're still paying for the fertilizer taxes that you're paying for. You're still paying for the transportation taxes you're still paying for. So guess what? Carbon taxes did not go away. It just went out of sight, out of mind. That's all it happened. And now you get a schlump like her making this just absolute embarrassment to say that, oh, it's just climate change. It's climate change and the fact that we're taxing and starving people out of food. That's it. It's just climate change. You know, the thing that we've manipulated the weather patterns and causing droughts and floods all across the world. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing that they use the excuse of climate change, even though they can literally manipulate the weather. Isn't that interesting? Oh, we can't, can't grow more crop because of climate change. Really? Coming from the people that have access to generating rainfall in the desert. Can't just generate rainfall over farm fields and let crops grow so we can feed and replenish our survival? Of course not. This is sick. This is sick.
Feeling quite
how do you
despondent.
think tariffs are impacting food inflation?
Look, there are a number of impacting.
Like which tariffs specifically?
The focus here is on the things that we can control, as I said in my speech.
So when she goes on about the tariffs, he asks, what tariffs? Which tariffs are you talking about? Which one specifically is hurting with grocery prices? She completely skips that. Goes on to another word salad.
And there's no doubt that Canadians are feeling the impact of food inflation. But I will tell you what it's not, if this is where you're going. It is not, and as many economists have shown,
you're the minister. I'm not asking what it's not. I'm asking what it is. Why is it twice the United States?
Well, food inflation in Canada is directly related to the number of foods that we must import and to the growing challenges of climate change.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, it's because climate change and the foods that we import. Okay, what about milk? What about the dairy farms across Canada that you're telling people to dump out milk deliberately because of supply management? Because all of our farms, the farms that we've grown up for many years, that it's one of the oldest professions on the face of the earth, are being bought out by higher ups, buying these, private equities and big monopolies are telling these farms that they had to dump out their inventory to keep the price up. That's deliberate. That's deliberate. He's not addressing any of that. Just goes on to say, well, it's climate change. Shuts off the mic. End discussion. What an absolute disgrace. What an absolute disgrace. No hesitation. No, just, it's climate change. Okay. That's the new scapegoat for these people. That's their scapegoat. Anything that they get held accountable for, that they could easily reverse and make things better. No, climate change. How does that factor in? How does climate change affect grocery prices from crops that are grown right here in our own backyards? How does that make sense? How does that make sense? Someone explain that to me. Because clearly, this woman can't. Here's table salt. So, a lot of people are now sharing all over social media. They're now comparing certain products, certain grocery products, to prices around the world and seeing how crazy it is. So, table salt says, holy crap. They're selling Canadian beef in Vietnam. They're selling Canadian beef in Vietnam for cheaper. For cheaper than we get here in Canada. What? Look at this. Superstore in Canada is selling blade steaks for $32 per kilogram. While in Vietnam, 1 kilogram of blade beef, Canadian blade beef, is 489,000 DNG, or $25 Canadian. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Vietnam. So you're telling me that beef products that we grow here, that we raise cattle here, that we slaughter, we have butchered here, and then sent all the way to the other side of the world, is cheaper than to sell it to our own people. Why is that? Oh, that's right. because Vietnam doesn't have these insidious taxes that think are going to help the planet. And I'm pretty sure that if a Vietnam person of government in Vietnam was held to account for gouging prices and inflation, they wouldn't use the excuse of climate change to back it up. They wouldn't act stupid intentionally. They'd be held to account. But here in Canada, we don't hold our people account. We just say, oh, it's climate change. And they expect you just to soak it in. End of story. Climate change. Nothing we can do. Nature wants you to starve, okay? That's just it. We have nothing else to do. We can't reverse the taxes. We can't, make it more beneficial for farmers to actually grow crop here in this country that would actually prosper this nation and make the... No. Of course not. That is crazy, folks. That's insane. I've shown this video many times before, and I kind of don't want to show it again because I'm just sick and tired of just seeing this. It's so heartbreaking. But this is the food professor again, saying in November 2025, dairy farmers of Ontario dumped 4.9% of milk, according to Milk Producer Magazine. That's roughly 10.2 million liters of milk. About $18 million in retail value for the month. Why would they dump the milk like that? Oh, it must be contaminated. Oh, it must be, some sort of flu outbreak. That's why they got to dump the milk. No. Because it's about supply control of pricing. Supply management is telling these farmers to dump out their product purposely to raise the prices. They are price gougers. Just like how people blame the giant retailers for price gouging, you also have to blame the supply management. The ones that are viciously the middleman that are trying to demonize farmers and saying, oh, well, you gotta play by our rules because we gotta make sure that products are safe. That's why this system is designed. Make sure the products are safe. Make sure you're not contaminating with dairy products. So why are you telling dairy farmers that good milk that could be sold at a cheaper rate because you have such a high inventory, why are you dumping out the milk? Because they want prices to accelerate. So let's just show this again to remind people, this is why. And I've seen comments all over the place about how expensive milk is. Even just for me, even just for a simple guy like me to do just a round of groceries, not even splurging on, big cuts of meat or anything like that. It's astronomical. So I couldn't even imagine if you're a family of four struggling to feed one another. Listen to this.
Hey guys, we're here at Give and Go's Farm in Southern Ontario. We milk about 260 cows. Right now during the winter months, you milk quite a bit more milk because the feed is very consistent. And as you do a good job, you will produce quite a bit of milk. So, but right now we're over our quota. It's regulated by the government and by the DFO. But the problem is what they don't understand is millions of people look at this milk running away because it's the end of the month. So I have to dump 30,000 liters of milk. It breaks my heart. I will show you. By the way, this here, Canadian milk, it's $7 a liter. When I go for my haircut, people say, wow, $7, Jerry, for a little bit of milk. I say, well, you have to go higher up because we have no say anymore as a dairy farmer on our own farm because they make us dump it. And no matter how we stand up, so this time I'm going public. I want the people to see the pain that us growers have of 365 days. As a little boy, we grew up on a dairy farm, came from Europe, work, and here we are. This is what's happening.
I mean, that is heartbreaking. It's even more heartbreaking that you know, even with the supply management system that's telling these farmers, you got to dump out the milk because we got to make sure we get a high cost because we want, money. It's always about the money. It's always about snatching people's pocketbooks when it comes to owning food. Even with that, like being told that you have to dump it out, it's sad. Like could there not be another option where they just give the milk to food banks? I know they can't. A lot of food banks can't store food that way. That's why they ask for non-perishable, because there's just no way to maintain, milk and dairy products. But got to be other options. Got to be other options instead of dumping out milk, usable milk, drinkable milk. In this regard, just so they can price gouge people in this manner. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that people are just not willing to be more angry about this. Like, I'm frustrated. I'm sure many people are frustrated. The minute you walk into a store and think, okay, a simple, weekly grocery bill shouldn't be that much, right? You've had that shock. You've had the receipt shock where you look down and go, holy crap, the hell did I buy? Gold? Like, how unbelievable it is. And this is the problem. Because now with the food in extraordinary circumstances, the fact that the inflation is skyrocketing, it's a domino effect. And this is what I've been saying. This is why it should be a vital issue for people, because now restaurants are shutting down across the country. And this is insane. This should be top page news. This should be the mark that shows that we're not only in a recession, we're in a massive rock bottom decline. Because restaurants not only feed people, but they also provide people jobs, and they benefit a lot of communities across the country. And here's a little snippet from Global News saying that after Valentine's Day, so after this past weekend, a lot of these restaurants don't know if they can operate anymore. Listen to this.
It's the final evening of Winterlicious, celebrating the city's diverse cuisine in restaurants across the city, including 7 numbers on Danforth.
It's the biggest Winterlicious since the inception.
In the midst of an affordability crisis, Canadians are pulling back on dining out, but events like this provide a much-needed boost.
Restaurant spending is the first thing that Canadians pull back on when they have a lack of discretionary spending.
National Not-for-Profit Restaurants Canada says 60% of restaurant operators report profitability in 2025 was worse or much worse compared with 1 year prior. As of November, nearly half of restaurants were operating at a loss or breaking even, sharp contrast to pre-pandemic levels. Last year's 2-month tax holiday provided a boost in food service sales, and Restaurants Canada has been urging Ottawa to make it permanent, especially as food costs and labor costs remain top concerns.
Removing GST off of food, it will help Canadians with affordability. It will help hardworking Canadians find a little bit of relief in their week. And we're seeing job stimulus, and we're seeing jobs for youth.
Last month, Dalhousie University found a startling number of restaurants closed in 2025, and more shutdowns are forecast.
We actually believe that Canada lost about 7,000 restaurants net. So doesn't mean there are no openings. There are openings, of course, but closures have outpaced openings, and we're expecting the same phenomena in 2026.
Owner Vito Marinuzzi, who's celebrating his 2 restaurants' 25th year in business, relies on good product, great recipes, and a strong foothold in the community, but recognizes others may not be as fortunate.
We've succeeded and you weather all the storms, but for the broader industry, anybody new, I think it's like the math really isn't mathing anymore.
As Marinuzzi prepares for a full house with patrons taking advantage of the prefix menu, he reiterates the need to find other solutions to keep clients coming.
For a lot of people, it's not a choice. They don't cook, they don't have time, they have to go out to eat. They either do an HST holiday or remove HST entirely on dining out. That would help volumes. That helps people in the pocketbook immediately.
I mean, that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. And when I used to work in retail, folks, a lot of our clientele, because I worked at a bakery deli situation. It was also a retail store. Majority of our clientele was restaurants in the community. And to see this, it's heartbreaking because restaurants can't operate. That means places that I used to work can't operate. It means a domino effect. It means more jobs lost. It means so much. This is why it's so important. And it just, I don't know what's going to take for people to wake up to this and demand more and demand we need a full revolution, because we're not going to vote our way out of this. We're not going to be able to electorally decide, oh, should we make food cheaper? Should we, make restaurants more viable? Should we, make things more livable here in this country? There's no way to vote for it. There's no way to vote for it because the whole country has been captured. So there needs to be a revolution. There needs to be a revolution. And I'm not saying, I'm not condoning violence. I'm not saying that, pitchforks and torches and, stuff like that. But look what happened at the Freedom Convoy. Look at how much of a presence that made, an effort that made to scare the politicians in power to finally respond. So maybe another convoy is needed. Then maybe we need to get it together once again, because this is affecting everybody. Everybody is getting affected by this. Cost of living, the grocery prices surging, the fact that restaurants are closing down, so you're going to see more unemployment, especially with the younger demographic, because again, just like Tim Hortons, just like fast food chains, restaurants used to be a great opportunity for people to start working and get experience. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen now?